there guys, what's happening, and welcome back to the channel. It's Mike here, coming to you from the beautiful show villa here at Trivananda. Thank you so much to the Trivananda team for letting us use your villa for today's shoot. And in today's video guys, I'm joined by Mr. Desmond Hughes, who is a British lawyer and a senior partner at Hughes Krupica, one of the most well-respected law firms in all of Phuket. Desmond, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
So in today's video, guys, we're going to be talking all about property ownership laws for foreigners here in Thailand, which is obviously a hot topic. If you're thinking about purchasing property here in Thailand, you absolutely need to have a solid understanding of the legal frameworks that allow you to do so. So in today's video, guys, we're going to be talking all about condo ownership, villa ownership, leasing land, nominee companies, all of these terms you've probably heard before. Our legal expert Desmond is going to be explaining them. So if you are thinking about buying property here, make sure you stay till the end of the video. So Desmond, before we get into the nitty-gritty about the ownership, why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Thailand?
Okay, so I was a lawyer in the UK. I moved to Thailand when I was 26 years old. I've been running a legal practice, and obviously that has evolved over the time that I've been here, which is 22 years. In partnership, so my two principal partners are Robert Krupica and Kun Pongsak Deng Kiao. We've worked together, I think with Kun Pongsak 19 years and with Robert Krupica 16 years, so we're a solid team. We have a great team of Thai transactional and litigation lawyers working with us. And, you know, over that period of time, as you would expect, all of us have to keep our toolbox sharp. So I have, you know, my legal qualifications. I have my master's degree from King's College London. I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators on various arbitration institute panels. I've also got my Hong Kong Overseas Lawyer Qualification exam. And then obviously all of our team are licensed and have their qualifications to either practice in the court or outside of the courts.
Okay, now I have seen your website. You've got quite an extensive CV, it has to be said. It's good to know that we've got top quality qualified lawyers like you in Phuket that our clients can work with. So that's a little bit about your background. Let's talk about ownership laws for foreigners in Thailand. So let's start off with condominiums. Obviously, the condo market here in Phuket is doing very, very well. A lot of new luxury branded residences coming onto the market now. Let's touch on the two main condo ownerships for foreigners, foreign freehold and foreign leasehold.
Okay, so foreign freehold is luckily very straightforward for foreign investors. So within a condominium building, there's a certain percentage of the registrable condominium area that can be sold to foreigners and owned by foreigners, and that is up to 49% as a general rule. And the foreigner, or the requirements are that they need to remit foreign currency for their purchase. They can actually remit foreign currency in and hold Thai baht, provided they have evidence of where the foreign remittance originated. And the sale and purchase agreement for most condominiums is quite straightforward. It's a standard government form. There are sometimes addendums and other contracts which relate to estate management and the amenities and facilities in the condominium. But the actual process for a foreign investor is transparent, quite easy to understand. And then obviously the golden nugget is having the title in your own name.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the foreign freehold is very, very popular with a lot of first-time buyers here in Thailand because of the security. You know, people like to have something in their own name. Now, that's the foreign freehold. Tell us a little bit about the leasehold, the foreign leasehold title for condos.
Sure. So in a condominium where the foreign quota has already been taken, the remaining balance of units might be held by the original developer. And those units can be leased to the foreigner as an alternative to foreign freehold ownership, provided the lease is drafted precisely and with the appropriate types of protections that one would need in a long-term investment, that lease can be registered at the land department, and that is in effect a leasehold title, and that's the style of ownership that a leasehold purchaser will take over when they purchase that unit.
Okay. So in your experience from working with foreigners, which of the two titles would you say was more popular, the freehold or the leasehold?
So sometimes in Phuket there's a premium for the foreign freehold because developers, sellers know that they'll maybe be sold more quickly. And that might make leasehold just slightly less expensive and still attractive if the developer is a company of substance with a strong management team and has been checked carefully. Then a leasehold might be attractive, but I think it's fair to say that most people, especially as you say, first-time buyers in Thailand, they'll gravitate towards the foreign freehold.
Sure, I would agree with that, absolutely. Okay, so that's the condominium side of things. Fairly straightforward, actually. From the point of paying a reservation fee to actually registering the condo in your own name, it can be usually 30 to 60 days, right, is the transaction time?
That's correct. In a pre-built situation, yes. In off the plan, which is very common in Thailand and particularly common in Bangkok, there is normally a weighted payment program where generally up to 35% of the purchase price is paid in advance of registration of title, but the majority of the purchase price is normally paid upon completion when the title is transferred.
Sure. Okay, so that's the condo side of things. Now, a lot of people, when they come to us as a real estate agency, they want to live in a villa. I mean, today we're in the Trivananda Show Villa, and look at this place. It's absolutely gorgeous. 4 bedrooms, beautiful view of the lake, infinity pool overlooking the lake. It's an absolute dream home. So there's obviously the land side of things to think about when we're purchasing a villa here in Thailand. So why don't we touch on the most secure way to structure the ownership if you want to purchase a villa here in Thailand, Desmond?
Okay, so the most secure way is that the developer will offer a lease of the land plot. That is because the general rule in Thailand is that foreigners cannot own land directly or indirectly. And that lease, obviously, as I said, in relation to leasehold condominiums, it needs to be drafted with security in mind because it's a long-term investment. It's the first term of the lease is registered for 30 years, and then there are renewals of 30 years, which are often drafted within the lease or as an addendum to the lease. And as an additional security, the property itself, a building in Thailand, can be owned by a foreigner and can be registered in their name. So they get the lease of the land plot and the security of that registration, and they also own the villa themselves. That prior to the delivery of the villa and the delivery of the registration of the lease can be written into a sale and purchase agreement with the form of those documents attached.
Okay. So just to be clear, to purchase a villa in the most secure way here, leasing the land for a period of 30 years and owning the bricks and mortar, so to speak, as a freehold title, correct? Okay. Now let's get into the lease renewal, because this is something that's been getting a lot of press over the last 3 to 6 months, actually. There was one particular article about a case, it was featured in the Phuket News, that I saw you do a presentation on, actually, at an event here in Phuket. Now, that particular case was to do with a lease renewal that hadn't been accepted, that hadn't been granted. So let's talk a little bit about how you can structure the 30-30-30, which a lot of developers are offering. A lot of developers are offering the renewable lease of a total of 90 years. How can we structure a contract to make sure that it actually gets renewed?
Okay, so just talking about that case briefly, the cases that go to the Supreme Court in Thailand about any matter, once the judgment is issued, that judgment is specific to the facts of that case. So this case just happened to be about renewals, but when there is such a case in Thailand, it's not actually binding or creating an obligation for the findings of that case to be followed across the board. So that's one point worth noting. Then this case in particular was very unique on its facts. It's not something that generally happens in the property market, a dispute of that nature. The lessons that can be drawn from the findings in that case are actually quite straightforward. First of all, a lease renewal provision needs to be drafted very carefully. Words such as automatic, the prepayment of rent in advance needs to be avoided. So when a first-time buyer or an investor is looking at a lease, obviously they need legal support to analyze whether the lease is drafted properly or not. And obviously reputable developers, they have their own in-house counsel who've helped them draft the lease. So you would expect the lease to be reliable and well drafted in those circumstances. So it's really a matter of drafting and making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Of course, but there are certain clauses that buyers or lawyers, legal teams can put in the addendum to the contract to ensure that it is renewed, yes?
Correct. So, if something is promised to be done, if it's not done, then one would expect compensation for that not to be done. And you have to bear in mind that apart from the lease and the renewal of the registration over the land plot, there is the fact of the ownership of the villa. So obviously if a lease is not renewed, one would expect to have some compensation in those circumstances. And of course, if you get to that stage where lease renewal is coming up, you would also expect the parties to be discussing that lease renewal well in advance. So that's something else that can be drafted into the agreement. Okay,
and you've obviously got experience in drafting those sort of agreements yourself, yes?
Yeah, so we have represented public companies in Thailand on their agreements and drafting of those clauses, and normally in high price point properties, but then, in condominium buildings for leases as well. And they pass muster.
I mean, I guess when you're leasing from a public limited company, from a reputable developer like Trivananda or Trisara, it's kind of in their interest, it's in their reputation's interest to let buyers see that they are renewing those leases, right?
Correct. So I think also the experience of being in Phuket and working with these developers is very valuable to test how they deal with requests like issuing a new lease or renewing a lease. So we see in practice that reputable developers, they're not interested in terminating a lease or allowing somebody's investment to expire. They're interested in extending the terms correctly and allowing that person to continue living in the environment that they've paid to live in. Sure. So it's really, the test is when a law firm communicates with the developer and says, my client would like to do A, B, or C, and you see the type of response that comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. So choose your developer carefully, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so something else that has also been in the press over the past year, actually, is the issue of nominee companies. So why don't we touch a little bit, for viewers who don't know what a nominee company is, maybe you can explain that, and also explain, why they are to be avoided.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, foreigners generally cannot own land in Thailand. There are actually some very rare exceptions to this rule. But as a standard form of investment, it's not available. Thai companies can own land, and foreign investors can own shares in Thai companies. So by logical extension, one might think you can just simply set up a Thai company, have some Thai shareholders, and then use that as a vehicle to purchase land as a foreigner. But the law and regulations actually prohibit that unless there is a genuine joint venture arrangement between Thais and foreigners to co-invest and get investment returns out of a property in a normal property transaction. If there is a structure set up which is essentially a sham or a way for the Thai shareholders to simply be holding their shares for the foreigner, or be at the instruction and complete exclusive control of the foreigner, then that would inevitably lead to a conclusion that there is a nominee arrangement. So setting up a Thai company is generally not available to most foreign investors. Of course, foreign investors do actually conduct joint venture investments with Thai developers, with Thai entrepreneurs, and that's quite normal.
Legitimate as well.
Yeah. And the signs that is legitimate would be, the discussions before the investment, normally a memorandum of understanding between the investors, the money from the Thai shareholders originating from them and not as a loan from the foreign investors and so on. So there are a series of processes that naturally fit with a joint venture investment.
Sure. Okay. And I think it's definitely true to say that the Thai company structure, the nominee company, used to be fairly common, sort of 10, 15 years ago. It was fairly usual for people to use that structure. However, Phuket has received a few visits from the DSI this year, and they're really putting a magnifying glass on this at the moment. So it's not to be advised, right?
Correct. I mean, there are ways to restructure companies that exist so that they're no longer nominee companies. Again, not always available to investors. But any kind of shortcut, just setting up a Thai company with strangers or with advisors as shareholders, has to be avoided.
Okay, solid advice, sure. Okay, so we've covered the condos, we've talked about the villa ownership and leasing the land. Are there any final pieces of advice that you would give to somebody watching this interview who's looking at purchasing property in Thailand and they want to make sure that they do so securely?
Okay, so the advice I would give would be to take due diligence and checking the property and anything connected to the property step by step to manage costs. So there's a natural transaction flow, which is to identify a property that the purchaser is interested in or really likes, meeting with an agent or the seller, and then being offered a reservation agreement. At that point, it is worth checking, is this reservation agreement acceptable? Is there anything I need to change? Without investing too much in legal fees and other costs at that time. Then there's the level of commitment in the reservation agreement, which can vary from a small commitment to a material commitment depending on the terms of the deal. That can be influenced by whether it's off the plan or a pre-built property and some other factors. Then there are the checks into the property itself. We are very strong on checking the history of the land underneath the project. And we divide those checks into two phases. Slightly less expensive phase, which is just checking if the whole history exists. And then a phase which involves checking all of those historical steps relating to the land and issuing a substantial report to the client. That's not always common in every jurisdiction, but the checks in Thailand are very, very important. Then there's the contracts themselves. We have a nice variety of agreements in Phuket, and it's always good to have some knowledge behind the review, some experience in what constitutes a good or average or not so good agreement. And then there's anything that requires negotiation or change to the substance of the agreements needs to be handled firmly but with diplomacy to maintain the relationships between the developer and the purchaser.
Thank you, Desmond. Some solid advice there. So obviously you can own property securely here in Thailand. However, before you purchase anything, you've got to make sure that you're working with an independent lawyer. So Desmond, if somebody wants to contact you, if they're purchasing property here in Phuket or in Thailand further afield, how can somebody reach you?
Okay, so in the bio, there'll be our contact details. They can contact me directly, our enquiries at hugheskrupica.com, email address. My telephone number is on there for direct contact. And then obviously they can visit our website, hugheskrupica.com, to check us out, what we do, and send us a contact inquiry.
Okay, so I'll put all of those links in the description and the pinned comment of this video. Desmond, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, and we'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.